Hey guys, what's up? I'm CJ and welcome back to my galaxy. Today I'm doing a sequel video for my most viral video, my most viewed video. What about the 25th Hunger Games? Now, I didn't think I'd be making a sequel, at least not as soon, about this specific video, because in that video, if you haven't already watched it, you definitely should go and check it out, because I didn't exactly predict the new book, but I did say I had a strange feeling that there was going to be a new book, except I thought it was going to be about the 25th Hunger Games, which is why we're back. I thought the book was going to come out in like 5-10 years, but to be fair, it has kind of been almost 5-ish years since Songbirds and Snakes came out. So, I mean, there's been a bit of a gap. It's been a couple months, 6-ish months, 8 months since the movie came out. So, I mean, it's not been that long, but it's still been a while. So I'm doing this video because this is going to be about the 50th Hunger Games. It's taking place in the year of the 50th Hunger Games, and we've completely skipped over the First Quarter Quell. So I have a couple of questions that is kind of going off of what my original video was about. So here's my question. What about the 25th Hunger Games? What happened? Why have we not mentioned it? Why have we skipped over the 25th Hunger Games? But in order to answer those questions, we have to go back and figure out some information that we already know about the 25th Hunger Games. And I have my notes here. For those of you who don't know, my laptop is where I keep all my notes when I'm doing videos. So if you see me looking down, that is what I am looking at, my laptop, at my notes. So Katniss in Catching Fire tells us that when Haymitch, and the Quarter Quell is coming back up, and they're watching Haymitch's games in Catching Fire, and Katniss tells us, I actually don't know when she mentions the 25th Hunger Games, that's just all the information about the Quarter Quell and previous Quarter Quells are just like, they're just in one clump in my brain. So Katniss tells us the 25th Hunger Games is where the district civilians had to vote in their own tribute. So essentially, I assume it was like a voting booth, and you wrote down a name of anyone between ages 12 to 18, and anyone who was in that age range, like the normal reaping, was eligible to be voted in. There's a lot of speculation as to how exactly that would have gone down. I personally think that a lot of people would have voted in the mayor's kids because of that class division that the capital really likes to drive home for the district citizens. So there's like a class divide in District 12, for example, between Merchant and Seam, and a lot of people from the Seam hold resentment against people in the Merchant area because, like Katniss, for example, in the example, Katniss thinks that the Merchant area is a lot richer than the Seam, and she thinks Peter was very well off because he's from the Merchant area. And there's also a whole racial divide thing, but this video is not about that. That's a whole nother topic, because you know they whitewashed Katniss, just putting that out there. To my surprise, when the prequel came out and I read the prequel, there was no mentions of the First Quarter Quell at all. I thought, since Katniss had mentioned that the person who, she assumes the person who came up with the Hunger Games came up with the Quarter Quell for hundreds of years, you know, enough ideas for hundreds of years. And, you know, that's what happens when they first announced that any of the previous victors were going to be in the reaping pool for the 75th Hunger Games. And I assumed because of that, the Hunger Games creator was literally, what is his name? Dinkaska Highbottom was literally the person who was going to come up with the Quarter Quell, and we'd hear a lot about it in the prequel, but there is quite literally no mention of it whatsoever. At all. And it was really weird because I just felt like it would have fit really well in that novel. But now with this new one, and they've completely skipped over the First Quarter Quell, we're talking about propaganda, talking about the 50th Hunger Games, Second Quarter Quell. I will come up with that theory. I'll tell you about that theory in a minute. I think it's just quite strange, but I think it's going to be very relevant in this next novel. Now, in the previous video, I did mention that the 25th Quarter Quell, or the Quarter Quell in general, was Snow's brainchild because it wasn't mentioned in the prequel, and eventually we know that Snow was going to intern for Dr. Gall, and we assume that he gained power through being a game maker, and I mentioned that I think that he probably poisoned the president or poisoned his way up to the top. That's very heavily implied that's what he did. So it's likely he was a head game maker. But when he became a head game maker, it's kind of up for interpretation. We know that Finnick says he was quite young when he came into power. So it's, once again, very up for interpretation, but the fandom does think that the First Quarter Quell is when he was the head game maker, and that's what propelled him into being president. And that's what I mentioned in my first video, that it was going to be his brainchild, the Quarter Quell. But with the new 50th Hunger Games novel, it's making me question if that actually was what happened or what. And another question I have with the new novel is, we don't know whose perspective it's going to be from. I have a theory that it's not going to be Haymitch. I just think it's too repetitive to make it from Haymitch's perspective. And not to mention, we're getting the stories of all the District 12 people, and all the District 12, not all the people, all the tributes who have won from District 12. And if we think about it, Lucy Gray's story wasn't told from her perspective, it was told from Snow's perspective. A very incredibly biased narrative, despite the fact that it was a third-person narration. We know that Katniss's narration was biased, even though it was from first person, so it's left to be biased, but at the same time, you know, it's going to be biased because we're just one side of the war. But obviously we're going to side with her because, you know, capital is killing people, so obviously not. We're not going to go with the capital. So we don't necessarily need to hear about Haymitch's games from his perspective, which is why I want to get into the next point. I think the Quarter Quell maybe didn't happen. Maybe. Or it didn't happen in the way that the districts are being told that it happened. With the name Quarter Quell, quell is literally to like quell any rebellion talks. So when it's named like that, like it has a literal purpose. The Quarter Quell is to be like, we're more powerful than you. The districts are constantly always going to be depressed. The capital is more powerful than the districts. That's literally what it is. So my theory is that they're seeing a lot of rebellion talks or hearing about it, like a bubbling of a rebellion in the 50th Hunger Games, and they think, well, we need something to bring up. We need something to tell them that we're more powerful than them. So the capital comes up with the idea of the Quarter Quell, and they're like, do you remember the 25th Hunger Games, the Quarter Quell? Do you remember the victor? And they like blackmail the 25th Hunger Games person, and like, if you speak up about it, we'll kill your family. I should not laugh at that, but like, that's what they would have done to blackmail them. We also don't know who the 25th Hunger Games person is, Victor is, so that's also up for interpretation. I keep saying that in this video, but still is up for interpretation. I think the possibility of the 25th Hunger Games and the First Quarter Quell being a lie could be to do with the propaganda that Suzanne Collins is talking about. Whether or not the First Quarter Quell happened, or it happened in a different way that Katniss has been told. You know, history kind of gets muddled as it goes along, especially if there's propaganda. So there's a really good chance that Katniss does not know enough information to be telling us as an audience what actually happened. The only problem with that theory that I'm thinking is that it's only 25 years later, and that we know that like Haymitch is still alive by the time of this third Quarter Quell, and Katniss's mother remembers what happened during the second Quarter Quell, that likely people are alive who still remember the first Quarter Quell. So I'm thinking that it's less likely that it was a lie, even though, you know, if it was a lie, wouldn't be surprised. But for plausibility, I'm thinking it's definitely not in the way that Katniss thinks the Quarter Quell happened. So it might not have been called a Quarter Quell at the beginning. It might not have been like one victor. You know, who knows? Maybe two people won, and then they were eventually killed, and they were Katniss and Peter. You know, they were like them. There could have been an array of things that went wrong with the 25th Hunger Games in the same way the 10th Hunger Games did. So I'm thinking that a lot of people were, you know, they were told lies, gaslit, murdered if they talked about it. They hid it in the back of people's minds. And once the 50th Hunger Games came around, they were like, time for our chance to correct things. And then Haymitch comes along and wins, and they're like, damn it, that wasn't supposed to happen. And like I said before with the 25th Hunger Games Victor, I always, in my mind, for some reason, the 25th Hunger Games Victor is always is a male. I don't know why that is. I've just like gendered them for no reason. It could very well be have been a girl, but my mind automatically goes to a boy. So we'll see. Maybe I'm like psychic and I'm like in tune with Suzanne Collins. I'm like, I know it's a boy who won the 25th Hunger Games. But the victor, the tribute who won the 25th Hunger Games, very likely alive in the same way that Haymitch was for the Third Quarter Quell. And I find it interesting, if you remember for the Third Quarter Quell, they paraded Haymitch around. They talked a lot about him. You know, the previous year that he'd managed to get 2 tributes alive out of the Hunger Games. If they paraded around Haymitch, it is very likely that they also paraded around this 25th Hunger Games victor to the districts, and they're like, look, this is the person who won the First Quarter Quell, have a look at this, entertainment for the capital, in the same way that they did for Haymitch. That I'm almost certain of. If that victor is still alive by the time of the 50th Hunger Games, which is very likely because they would have been a teenager. I think Haymitch would have been about 40 by the time of the 74th Hunger Games, or 75th. He was like 41, whatever, along those lines, right? I think it's very likely they're parading around the First Quarter Quell victor, and we are 100% going to see this person. And I also have a theory, you know, say the Quarter Quell wasn't a lie, you know, even though I think there's a possibility that that's a part of the propaganda Suzanne Collins is talking about, whether it was a lie or there's some sort of lie in there. I think the Quarter Quell person, since District 12 is not going to have a mentor because unfortunately Lucy Gray not really around, you know, there's an ambiguous ending for the prequel, there's definitely not a District 12 mentor. Who's going to mentor Haymitch? I'm just saying, maybe it's going to be the Quarter Quell victor that's going to mentor Haymitch. That also brings into question, whose perspective is this new story going to be told from? And I think it's a very good chance, there's a very good chance that the 25th Quarter Quell's victor is going to be telling us the story. However, they're going to be quite old by that point, and this is a YA novel series. So maybe not. Maybe they're a little bit too old, but maybe they're going to be a very major character in some way. And I know people are throwing around multiple perspectives. So if Snow's in there, then the 25th Quarter Quell narrator is going to be. And I'm landing on Plutarch being the perspective, but that's also another video. But I think Plutarch's going to be telling this story. Maybe I've called it. Just come back to this video. I've called it. If I'm correct, I will be bragging about it. So what about the 25th Hunger Games? Why has it been skipped over? We don't really have information to be answering those questions. We have very little information about the 25th Quarter Quell. I keep saying 25th Quarter Quell. My God, can you imagine how long the games would have had to have gone on for to get to a 25th Quarter Quell? Oh my God. The First Quarter Quell, the 25th Hunger Games, that we don't know a lot about that whole spiel. And I think that leaves it open for no repetition, like very little repetition from Catching Fire, you know, because we have Haymitch's games in that book. If we get a lot about how those games happened and how they're trying to improve from the 25th Hunger Games to the 50th Hunger Games, I think that would be a lot of information that we haven't had before and a lot less repetition, and make a very interesting storyline for propaganda to be a main theme. I am almost 100% certain the 25th Hunger Games victor is going to be a very major, or like a secondary character, supporting character, probably a supporting character in this story, just because why wouldn't they be? If Haymitch was so big during the 75th Hunger Games, I bet you this victor from the 25th Hunger Games was 100% paraded around like Haymitch was. That, or, you know, Haymitch was blackmailed to be paraded around and being like, if you don't let us do this, you'll turn out like the 25th Hunger Games victor, and you don't want to end up dead like that guy. Once again, I feel like they're male. I'm gonna be proven so wrong if this is a girl tribute. You know, girl power, girl boss, bring a girl tribute like Katniss back, because, you know, Lucy Gray ended up dead. So we would love some strong feminine power of someone who survived in this narrative. Mags. I'm getting off track now. I'd love Mags to be a character, you know. Maybe she'd know the 25th Hunger Games victor as well. Maybe they were from District 4. Who knows? Okay, I've said everything I want to say about the 25th Hunger Games and my predictions with what they'll be in the 50th Hunger Games novel. I just think there is so little information. It doesn't make sense to not mention them in this narrative. I just find it so weird that she skipped over it. And I just don't see why she would have done that if it weren't for the fact that it's going to be brought up quite a bit in this new novel. It just doesn't make sense in my brain to not bring it up. You know, it has to be there. We need more information about the First Quarter Quell. I need it because I need information about the First Quarter Quell. I'm begging you, Suzanne Collins. Anyways, guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you would like to tell me about your theories about this new book, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. There are a lot of people who write me entire essays in my comment section because my subscribers are so smart, and I'd love to continue to hear more information. If you guys think anything about the 25th Hunger Games, any ideas I've mentioned in this video today, or if you guys think your own theory, you have your own theory, I would love to hear it. You know, we love expanding our minds on this channel. Also, whose perspective do you think this new novel is going to be on? Because I'm thinking it's going to be Plutarch or someone from the capital, but a lot of people have a lot of different ideas. So if you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so I'd greatly appreciate it if you did subscribe for more Hunger Games analysis videos. Also, go and watch my What About the 25th Hunger Games first video, not this sequel video, but the first one. Once again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, but I've been CJ, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!